It is a new year, and as well as doing my favorite and least favorite books of the year, my best and worst books of the year, I also like to do my favorite and least favorite covers of the year. So these are mostly physical books that I have read, my favorite and my least favorite. So we'll start with my least favorite, not the worst book cover that I read this year, but one that I don't think did justice to the book, is Dusk or Dark or Dawn or Day, which is by Shauna Maguire. This is a standalone ghost story by Shauna Maguire, and yes, cornfields and the city do play a role in it. I just think this cover was mismarketed. I just think they didn't know what to do with it or how to display the story on the cover. Other than that, it's not so bad. My next least favorite cover of the books that I've read in 2025 was this copy of Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I did like that this copy was pretty heavily annotated, at least in parts. I do love an annotated book. I just think this is one of those times where a classic is given a hideously ugly cover for some reason. Maybe it was a cheap version. Maybe it was the only painting or drawing that they could afford to put on the cover. It doesn't do anything for this story, and it doesn't do anything for this book, but because it's a classic, it doesn't really need to do anything for the book. You're going to pick it up no matter what the cover is. There are some elements of The Ballad of Jacquot de la Haye by Bryony Cameron that I like the little swords on the back, like the ship on the front, but I think overall this is another one that was kind of mismarketed. I just think they didn't know how to tell this story with the cover design. It's a lesbian pirate story, but it's not a raucous, fun adventure. It's kind of a serious book about racism and oppression. There is a love story throughout, so I think they could have done a better job, and I definitely think that highlighting Jacquot de la Haye and not just putting a vague form of a black woman on the front would have been better for this book. I think it would have gotten this book out to many more people. I also really hate when books have a faceless, anonymous black person on the cover as opposed to highlighting the black main character of the story. Overall, this one just felt lazy to me, and it is why it's one of my least favorite covers of the year. Enough with the negativity, and on to my favorite covers of the year. I wasn't initially going to include Anyone by Nate Klug. This is a small press collection of poetry, but every time I look at this book, I just love it. It makes me so happy. I like that you can interpret it as whatever you want, kind of like poetry. I like that it kind of symbolizes a cemetery, maybe lightning coming from the sky, but you could also look at the sky as being very cheerful. Double Blind by Edward St. Alban is the first by this author that I've read, and I mostly picked this one up for the cover. This was a cover grab. I think I got it in a little free library, and I absolutely love the botanicals. I love the colors used. I love that the font is sort of in a hand-rendered style. It's very painterly. I love the evenness of the title on the top and the name on the bottom. I like that the author designation, author of the Patrick Melrose novels, is even a little bit more like handwritten. I just think it's a really pretty cover. Does it say anything about the book? I don't think so. I actually don't remember very much about this book at all, except that it was about three friends. So I don't think it really fits the novel, but it's definitely lovely to look at all on its own. My next favorite cover of a book that I read in 2025 is Death by Dumpling by Vivian Chen. I love mass market paperbacks, one, so I always love to read them. I love the size, I love the way they feel, but I also think that this cover is pretty spectacular. I don't love the font on the dumpling container, on the Chinese to-go container, but other than that, I think the painterly nature of the illustration on the front, the way it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, with the pack of poison disguised as Chinese hot sauce or Chinese duck sauce. I think it is kind of a throwback to the super fun mass market paperbacks of old mystery novels like Mary Robert Reinhardt or Agatha Christie. Whereas the next horror novel, Graveyard Shift by Emma Rio, is much more modern. It has that creepy illustration of a decaying mouse, of mushrooms, but similar to Death by Dumpling, it really sets you up for the tone of the book. So in Death by Dumpling, the cover makes you think it's going to be a little bit silly, a little bit tongue-in-cheek. In Graveyard Shifts, it definitely sets you up to know that there are going to be horrors, that there is going to be some decay happening in this story. I love the way the illustration is intertwined with the title. I love that the title is so big. I also really like the illustrations for the chapter headers. Talking again about modern horror novels, I think that What Moves the Dead and What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher kind of started this trend. Well, not started it, but were one of the early frontrunners. So before the M.L. Rio book, these books kind of exemplified that eerie, decaying horror that we have come to expect in books like these. I found the softcover version of What Moves the Dead in a little free library, and I really like that there's some separating pages. I really love the cover, of course. I like the simple font, sans serif on the cover, and the way that the illustration intertwines with the cover. And so I was not expecting to be so blown away by What Feasts at Night, because that one I got in hardcover, and it's really quite spectacular. It's a very beautiful book. Again, the cover, the simple font, the very light drop shadow on the font, and then when you go inside, the end papers are so gorgeous. The naked hardback is so gorgeous. It was not what I expected. After reading both of these, I will definitely be continuing on with the series, and I will definitely be trying to get my hands on the hardcover editions for all of these books and swapping out my softcover edition. I think that these covers really do set you up for the story. They are dreadful. They are creepy. They are atmospheric. They do have a lot to do with dampness and decay and rotting. And I love that there is that feeling that you get right away when you look at the cover. The hardcover edition also has a raised font on the dust jacket, which is really nice. There is a weird amount of negative space around the illustration and around the title, but I kind of like that too. And I've never seen the hardcover editions for What Moves the Dead or for the third in the series, so I'm interested to see what motifs are used on those two books. And then my favorite cover of the books that I read in 2025 is one that I've had for quite a while. It is At Bertram's Hotel by Agatha Christie. Now, I have several versions of most Agatha Christie books that I own, but I think I only have this one, and it's just such a good one. What a great vintage book. It has a little insert in the middle, but I love the cover. I just love the simplicity of it. I love the way that at first glance, it gives you a lot of information about the book. Like, obviously the book is called At Bertram's Hotel, and you see a bellhop or someone helping someone out of a car. It gives you the feeling of luxury, the feeling of this hotel, but at the same time, maybe it's a little shabby as well. And then when you see the skull on the car, you really start to realize what this book is about. Again, I love the negative space. I love the font. I do wish the title of the book were a little larger and Christie's name a little smaller. She doesn't really need her name quite so big because we all know who Agatha Christie is. So those were my least favorite and favorite covers of books that I read in 2025. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I showed here. Let me know what one of your favorite covers of the year was. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!